There are moments in life when you realize that you can no longer keep something important only inside your heart. You can think about it privately, pray about it, question it, and even imagine how people will react. But eventually, there comes a moment when you have to stand in the light and say, "This is where I'm going. This is the decision I have made." For me, announcing my wedding date represents one of those moments. It is not simply a date written on a calendar. It is a declaration that something has changed within me, something has become real, and something I once hoped for has now moved into a new chapter. When you announce a wedding date, people may hear a simple announcement. They may think about the celebration, the clothes, the flowers, the guests, the photographs, and all the beautiful moments surrounding a wedding. But behind that announcement is a much deeper story. There are conversations that nobody else heard, decisions that nobody else saw, moments of uncertainty, moments of hope, and countless thoughts about what the future could look like. A wedding date may be only a few words, but those words can carry years of lessons, growth, patience, and preparation. That is why this announcement feels different. It is not about trying to impress anyone. It is not about proving anything to the world. It is about recognizing that life sometimes brings you to a point where you have to stop looking backward and begin looking forward. There's a certain weight that comes with saying, "This is the day." Suddenly, the future does not feel like some distant idea anymore. It has a place on the calendar, it has a direction, it has a purpose. And I think that is what makes moments like this so emotional. When something becomes official, you realize that you are stepping into responsibility. You are no longer simply dreaming about what love might become. You are preparing to live it. You are preparing to show up when life is easy and when life is difficult. You are preparing to understand that love is not measured only by beautiful moments, but also by how two people respond when circumstances are challenging. For a long time, many of us imagine that the most important part of love is finding the right person. But as you grow, you begin to understand that finding someone is only the beginning. What you build together matters even more. The relationship requires patience. It requires honesty. It requires the willingness to listen when you would rather speak, to forgive when you would rather hold on to anger, and to remain committed when emotions are not as strong as they were on the easiest days. So when I announce a wedding date, I am not simply announcing a celebration. I am announcing a commitment to a future that I cannot completely predict. None of us knows exactly what tomorrow will bring. We can make plans, but life will always surprise us. There will be beautiful seasons, difficult seasons, unexpected challenges, and moments that test our character. But perhaps the most meaningful part of commitment is deciding that you are willing to face those seasons together. There is also something humbling about allowing other people to know about a decision that matters so deeply to you. The moment you make an announcement, people begin to have opinions. Some will celebrate with you. Some will ask questions. Some may not understand your choices. And some may even remind you of the fears you are already trying to overcome. But at some point, you have to learn that your life cannot be directed entirely by the expectations of other people. You have to become comfortable with making meaningful decisions based on what you believe is right, rather than what receives the most approval. That does not mean ignoring wisdom or refusing advice. It means understanding that there are certain decisions you must ultimately make for yourself. Love, commitment, and the direction of your life require honesty with your own heart. And perhaps that is why announcing this date changed everything. Before the announcement, the future could still feel like a possibility. After the announcement, it became a responsibility. The dream became a responsibility. The dream became a plan. The hope became a commitment. The possibility became something I had to prepare for. That change can be both exciting and frightening. Exciting because you are moving towards something meaningful. Frightening because every meaningful step requires you to leave something behind. You leave behind a version of yourself that was comfortable with uncertainty. You leave behind excuses. You leave behind the idea that you can wait forever before becoming the person you need to be. A wedding does not magically make someone ready for marriage. The preparation begins long before the ceremony. It begins in the way you learn to communicate, the way you handle disappointment, the way you treat people when nobody is watching, and the way you grow through your own weaknesses. It begins when you decide that love should make you more responsible, more patient, more generous, and more willing to grow. So this announcement is also a reminder to myself. The next chapter deserves the best version of me that I can become. Not a perfect version, because perfection does not exist, but an honest version. A person willing to learn. A person willing to apologize. a person willing to listen, a person willing to sacrifice when necessary and celebrate when there's something beautiful to celebrate. And as I look toward that date, I realized that the most important thing is not the day itself. The most important thing is everything that comes after it. The date marks the beginning of a promise, but the real meaning of that promise will be revealed through the life built afterward. This is why announcing the wedding date changed everything. It made the future feel real, and it reminded me that love is not simply something you feel. It is something you choose, protect, and build every day. And now, with that choice made, the next chapter begins. There is a difference between loving someone and choosing to build a life with someone. Love can begin with a feeling, a connection, a moment that makes your heart move in a way you did not expect. But commitment asks something deeper from you. It asks you to take that feeling and turn it into a decision. It asks you to stop thinking only about what makes you happy today and start thinking about what will help both of you grow tomorrow. That is where everything begins to change. When love becomes a commitment, your understanding of the future becomes different. You are no longer planning only for yourself. Your decisions begin to carry another person's hopes, dreams, fears, and needs. You begin to understand that your choices have consequences beyond your own life. That realization can be both beautiful and challenging because it requires you to become more intentional about the person you are becoming. Real love does not simply ask, "How does this person make me feel?" It eventually asks, "What kind of person am I willing to become for this relationship?" That question changes everything. It forces you to look honestly at yourself. It makes you examine your patience, your communication, your pride, your habits, and the ways you respond when things do not go according to plan. Commitment means understanding that not every day will feel like the beginning. There will be mornings when life is busy, evenings when both people are exhausted, and seasons when circumstances create pressure. There may be disagreements, misunderstandings, unexpected responsibilities, and moments when you do not have all the answers. But commitment says, "I am still here. I am willing to work through this. I am willing to listen. I am willing to grow." That is one of the most powerful things about choosing someone. You are not promising that life will always be easy. You are promising that when life becomes difficult, you will not immediately run away from the responsibility of working through it. You begin to understand that relationships are not sustained by emotions alone. They are sustained by character. And character is revealed in ordinary moments. It is revealed when nobody is applauding. It is revealed when you have to put your own preference aside for the good of the relationship. It is revealed when you choose honesty instead of convenience, patience instead of anger, forgiveness instead of resentment, and understanding instead of judgment. This is why a serious commitment changes your priorities. You start thinking differently about time. You begin to realize that the people you love cannot receive only whatever energy is left over after everything else has been completed. Relationships need attention. They need presence. They need conversations. They need laughter, encouragement, reassurance, and sometimes difficult discussions that neither person wants to have. Commitment teaches you that love is an action. You can say beautiful words, but eventually, those words have to become behavior. You can say that you care, but caring must appear in the way you treat someone. You can say that you will be there, but eventually there will be a difficult day when you have to prove what those words mean. That does not mean losing yourself or becoming someone you are not. Healthy commitment should not erase individuality. Instead, it should encourage two people to become stronger versions of themselves while learning how to walk in the same direction. It is about bringing two lives together without forgetting that each person still has responsibilities, dreams, and a unique purpose. And perhaps one of the greatest changes is that commitment forces you to think beyond the excitement of the moment. A wedding can be beautiful. A celebration can be unforgettable. But marriage is built in the quiet moments that nobody photographs. It is built over breakfast conversations, difficult decisions, shared responsibilities, unexpected challenges, and countless small choices to show love. The ceremony may last for a day, but the commitment continues when the music stops and the guests go home. That is when the real work begins. That is when two people discover what it means to build a home, protect trust, communicate honestly, and support each other through changing seasons of life. This is also why commitment requires maturity. You cannot expect another person to fulfill every need, solve every insecurity, or make every problem disappear. You have to take responsibility for your own growth while also learning how to support someone else. You have to understand that love is not about controlling another person. It is about respecting them enough to allow honesty, freedom, growth, and trust to exist. When you make a serious commitment, you also become more aware of the importance of consistency. Anyone can be loving when everything is going perfectly. The real test comes when there is disagreement, disappointment, or uncertainty. Can you remain respectful? Can you communicate without trying to hurt each other? Can you remember why you chose one another even when emotions become complicated? Those questions matter because commitment is not a promise that problems will never happen. It is a promise that problems will not automatically become reasons to give up. And that is what makes love so powerful when it becomes a commitment. It moves beyond the temporary and begins to create something lasting. It transforms dreams into responsibilities and feelings into choices. It teaches you that the strongest relationships are not necessarily the ones that never face difficulty, but the ones where two people continue choosing honesty, respect, patience, and love through every season. So as this new chapter approaches, the goal should not simply be to have a beautiful wedding. The deeper goal is to build a beautiful life together, one shaped by trust, sacrifice, laughter, forgiveness, faith, and genuine commitment. Because when love becomes a commitment, you are no longer simply asking, how much do I love this person? You are asking, how faithfully am I willing to live that love every day? And that is where love becomes more than a feeling, it becomes a life you choose to build together. There's always a story behind a decision that changes your life. People often see the final moment, the announcement, the celebration, and the smile, but they do not always see everything that happened before that moment. They do not see the questions you carried, the lessons you learned, the disappointments you experienced, or the moments when you had to become stronger without knowing exactly where the road was taking you. Looking back, I realized that the journey was just as important as the destination. Before you can confidently say yes to a future, you have to understand something about yourself. You have to know what you value, what you are willing to sacrifice, what you believe love should look like, and what kind of life you want to build. Those answers do not always come quickly. Sometimes they come through years of experience. Sometimes they come through mistakes. Sometimes they come through moments when life does not give you what you expected. There were probably moments when I wondered whether the future I hoped for would ever arrive. There are seasons in life when you look around and see other people moving forward while you feel as though you were standing still. You watch relationships develop, families grow, dreams become reality, and you begin asking yourself when your own chapter will finally begin. But waiting does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes the waiting is where the preparation takes place. During those seasons, you learn patience. You learn that you cannot force the right things to happen simply because you are ready for them. You learn that timing matters. You learn that sometimes what you desperately want is not what you actually need, and sometimes a closed door is protecting you from a future that would have caused more pain than joy. Every disappointment can teach you something if you are willing to learn from it. Every difficult relationship can reveal something about your boundaries, your expectations, your communication, and your understanding of love. Every season of loneliness can teach you that being alone is not the same thing as being incomplete. Those lessons matter because you cannot build a healthy future while constantly carrying the unresolved weight of your past. At some point, you have to look at what happened, accept what you cannot change, learn what you need to learn, and then give yourself permission to move forward. That does not mean pretending that difficult experiences never happened. It means refusing to let them define everything that comes next. I believe that every meaningful relationship requires two people who are willing to grow. You cannot expect a future relationship to succeed if you bring the same patterns, fears, and unresolved habits that damaged your previous seasons. At some point, you have to become honest with yourself and ask, what do I need to change? Maybe you need to become more patient. Maybe you need to communicate more clearly. Maybe you need to stop assuming that people can read your mind. Maybe you need to learn how to apologize without defending yourself. Maybe you need to stop running away whenever something becomes difficult. Growth is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. The journey toward commitment is therefore not only about finding someone. It is also about becoming someone who can faithfully participate in a healthy relationship. And sometimes the greatest preparation happens in ordinary moments. It happens when you learn to serve others without expecting recognition. It happens when you practice keeping your word. It happens when you learn to control your anger, listen carefully, and treat people with dignity even when you disagree with them. These small choices shape your character long before anyone sees the results. That is why the wedding announcement carries more meaning than people may realize. It represents everything that came before it. The lessons, the waiting, the growth, the uncertainty, and the hope all become part of the story. There's also something beautiful about realizing that you do not need to understand every detail of the future before taking the next step. Sometimes you simply need enough courage to move forward with what you know today. You may not know exactly what the next 5 or 10 years will look like. You may not know every challenge that will come. But you can decide what values will guide you through those years. You can decide to be honest. You can decide to communicate. You can decide to remain faithful to your commitments. You can decide to choose patience when circumstances become difficult. You can decide that love will be demonstrated through actions, not just words. And perhaps that is what the journey has taught me most. The future is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built through thousands of small decisions. The wedding date may be one important decision, but the life that follows will be built one day at a time. Every conversation will matter. Every act of kindness will matter. Every act of kindness will matter. Every apology will matter. Every moment of forgiveness will matter. Every time two people choose to understand each other instead of trying to win an argument, they will be building something stronger. So when I look back at the journey, I do not want to focus only on the moments that were difficult. I want to appreciate what those moments taught me. I want to be grateful for the lessons that prepared me. I want to recognize that some delays were not denials, and some endings were actually making room for beginnings I could not yet see. Maybe that is why the announcement feels so meaningful now. It is not simply about where I am going. It is also about understanding how far I have come. The journey taught me to wait, to grow, to trust, and to become ready for a commitment greater than a momentary feeling. And now, everything I learned along the way becomes part of the foundation for the chapter that comes next. There comes a moment when you have to decide whether fear is going to write the story of your future, or whether you are going to take responsibility for writing it yourself. Fear can be very convincing. It can sound like wisdom when you are uncertain. It can tell you to wait a little longer, to avoid taking risks, to protect yourself from disappointment, and to stay where everything feels familiar. But sometimes the place that feels safest is the very place that keeps you from experiencing the life you were meant to build. Choosing a future does not mean pretending that fear does not exist. It means refusing to allow fear to make every important decision for you. When you are preparing to make a commitment as meaningful as marriage, uncertainty is natural. You begin thinking about everything that could go wrong. You wonder whether you are ready, whether life will change, whether you will be able to handle difficult seasons, and whether the person you love will continue walking beside you when circumstances become challenging. Those questions are real, and they deserve honest answers. But there is a difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom encourages you to prepare. Fear tells you to run. Wisdom asks you to think carefully. Fear tells you that you will never be ready. Wisdom recognizes challenges while still believing that challenges can be faced. Fear sees every possibility of failure and forgets every possibility of growth. At some point, you have to understand that no meaningful future comes with a guarantee. You can plan carefully, communicate honestly, prepare responsibly, and still encounter things you never expected. That is simply part of life. The goal is not to eliminate every uncertainty before moving forward. The goal is to develop the character, trust, patience, and courage necessary to face uncertainty when it arrives. That is especially true when it comes to love. If you wait until there is absolutely no risk of being hurt, you may wait forever. Loving someone means making yourself vulnerable. It means allowing another person to know you deeply. It means showing your hopes and your weaknesses and trusting that those things will be treated with care. Vulnerability can feel frightening because it removes the illusion of complete control. But for such, real courage is not the absence of fear. Perhaps courage is looking at the fear honestly and saying, "I will not let you decide everything for me." There may have been moments when the easiest thing would have been to stay comfortable. It is easy to remain in a familiar routine. It is easy to tell yourself that tomorrow will be a better time to make a serious decision. It is easy to keep dreaming without taking the step that turns the dream into reality. But eventually, dreams require action. A future cannot be built entirely in your imagination. There comes a point when you have to step forward. You have to make the call. You have to have the conversation. You have to make the commitment. You have to accept that moving into a new chapter means leaving some things behind. That does not mean acting recklessly. It means refusing to confuse hesitation with wisdom. Sometimes we tell ourselves that we are waiting for the right time, when what we are really doing is avoiding the discomfort of change. The right time may never feel completely comfortable. Important decisions often require you to move forward while still carrying some questions. And that is where faith becomes important. Faith does not mean believing that nothing difficult will ever happen. It means believing that difficulty does not automatically mean the decision was wrong. It means trusting that when challenges come, you can learn, adapt, communicate, and continue growing. The future I want cannot be built by constantly looking backward. I have to be willing to leave behind old fears, old disappointments, and old versions of myself that were shaped by experiences that no longer define me. The past can teach me, but it cannot be allowed to control me. There is a difference between remembering what happened and living inside what happened. If you have been hurt before, it is natural to become cautious. If you have experienced disappointment, it is natural to protect your heart. But eventually, healing requires you to understand that a new chapter should not automatically be punished for what happened in an old one. You cannot build a new future while constantly expecting it to repeat the past. That is why choosing a future requires forgiveness, not only forgiving other people, but sometimes forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for mistakes. Forgiving yourself for trusting the wrong people. Forgiving yourself for staying too long in situations that were not right. Forgiving yourself for not knowing then what you know now. You were learning, and now you have the opportunity to use those lessons differently. The wedding date becomes more than a date because it represents a decision to stop allowing uncertainty to steal every beautiful possibility. It represents a willingness to move from preparation into participation, from dreaming into doing, and from wondering about the future into actively building it. Of course, there will still be fears. There will still be questions. There will still be days when confidence feels stronger and days when uncertainty feels louder. But that is not a reason to abandon the future. It is a reminder that commitment requires courage again and again. Every new chapter asks something from us. Sometimes it asks us to be brave. Sometimes it asks us to be patient. Sometimes it asks us to trust when we cannot see the entire road ahead. And maybe that is the greatest lesson. You do not need to see the whole road to take the next step. You simply need enough courage to believe that the future is worth building, enough wisdom to prepare for it, and enough faith to keep walking when the path becomes uncertain. So I choose to move forward, not because I have every answer, but because I believe some futures are worth the courage it takes to begin them. And now, instead of letting fear decide what comes next, I choose to step forward and build the future I have been preparing for. When I think about marriage, I realize that the wedding itself is only the beginning of the story. The celebration may be beautiful, the room may be filled with flowers, music, family, and friends, and there may be a moment when two people stand before everyone and make promises to each other. But after the celebration is over, life continues. The guests go home, the music becomes quiet, and two people are left to live the promises they made. That is where the real meaning of marriage begins. Marriage, to me, is not simply about having someone beside you when life is easy. It is about choosing to stand beside someone when life becomes complicated. It is about understanding that love is not proven only during the happiest moments, but also during the seasons when patience is required, when communication becomes difficult, and when circumstances test the strength of the relationship. A marriage should be a place where two people can be honest with each other. Not perfect, not pretending, not constantly trying to appear stronger than they really are, but honest. There will be days when one person needs encouragement. There will be days when one person needs to admit that they were wrong. There will be moments when both people need to slow down and listen, instead of immediately defending themselves. That kind of honesty requires trust. And trust is not created overnight. It is built through consistency. It is built when you do what you said you would do. It is built when you keep your promises even when nobody is watching. It is built when you protect the relationship rather than looking for opportunities to win an argument. Marriage also means learning how to communicate with love. Communication is not simply talking. It is listening. It is trying to understand what the other person means rather than only preparing your response. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is become quiet long enough to hear what someone is actually saying. There will be disagreements. Two people can love each other deeply and still see situations differently. They can have different personalities, different habits, different ways of handling pressure, and different expectations. The goal should not be to eliminate every difference. The goal should be to learn how to respect each other despite those differences. You do not have to destroy someone's confidence to prove that your opinion is correct. Sometimes love means saying, "I understand why you feel that way," even when you do not completely agree. Sometimes it means taking a step back and realizing that protecting the relationship is more important than proving a point. Marriage also means sacrifice. Not the kind of sacrifice that makes someone lose themselves, but the kind that teaches two people to think beyond their own comfort. There will be times when one person's needs require extra attention. There will be moments when plans have to change. There will be situations where giving matters more than receiving. That is part of building a life together. And yet, sacrifice should not be seen as something negative. When it comes from genuine love, sacrifice can become an expression of care. It says, "Your well-being matters to me." It says, "I am willing to make room for you." It says, "We are not two people competing against each other. We are two people learning how to move forward together." Marriage also means forgiveness. Not pretending that hurt never happened, but refusing to let every mistake become a permanent weapon. People will make mistakes. Words will sometimes come out the wrong way. Expectations will sometimes be missed. There will be moments when apologies are necessary. Forgiveness does not mean ignoring serious problems or accepting unhealthy behavior. It means understanding that a strong relationship requires room for genuine growth, accountability, and change. If two people are willing to admit their mistakes and work toward becoming better, forgiveness can become part of the foundation that keeps a relationship strong. I also believe marriage should include friendship. Before being partners in responsibilities, two people should still enjoy being together. They should be able to laugh, talk about ordinary things, celebrate small victories, and create memories that have nothing to do with grand occasions. Because life is mostly made of ordinary days. The extraordinary moments are beautiful, but the ordinary moments are where life is actually lived. Sharing a meal, talking after a long day, laughing about something nobody else would understand, encouraging each other before an important moment, sitting together in silence when words are not necessary. These small moments can become some of the most meaningful parts of a marriage. Marriage also means choosing each other repeatedly. One decision may begin the journey, but thousands of decisions will continue it. Every morning gives you another opportunity to show respect. Every difficult conversation gives you another opportunity to communicate with kindness. Every challenge gives you another opportunity to remember that you are on the same side. That is why the wedding date should never be considered the finish line. It is a starting point. The real promise is not simply, "I will love you on our wedding day." The deeper promise is, "I will continue learning how to love you through the different seasons of our life." There will be changes. People grow. Circumstances change. Responsibilities increase. Dreams evolve. But if two people are willing to keep learning about each other, keep communicating, and keep choosing respect, they can grow together instead of growing apart. So when I think about marriage, I do not think only about the beauty of the ceremony. I think about the responsibility of the promise. I think about loyalty when nobody is watching, patience when things are difficult, forgiveness when mistakes happen, laughter when life becomes heavy, and faith when the future is uncertain. Marriage is not about finding someone who will make every problem disappear. It is about finding someone with whom you are willing to face life honestly and courageously. And that is the kind of commitment I want to honor, not just for one beautiful day, but through every ordinary and extraordinary day that follows. There is something powerful about reaching the end of one chapter and realizing that the next one is finally beginning. For so long, the future can exist only as an idea. You imagine what it might look like, you wonder who would be there, and you think about the possibilities, but you cannot completely see it. Then suddenly, a decision is made, a date is announced, and the future begins to feel real. That is what makes this moment so meaningful. It is not simply the announcement of a wedding. It is the beginning of a new season of life. A new beginning can bring excitement, but it can also bring questions. Whenever we step into something unfamiliar, there is a natural part of us that wonders what will happen next. We may have confidence one moment and uncertainty the next. We may feel ready, then suddenly realize how much responsibility comes with the decision we have made. But perhaps that is what makes a new beginning so beautiful. You do not need to have every answer before you begin. You only need the courage to take the next step. The wedding date represents a promise, but it also represents preparation. The real work does not begin when the ceremony starts. It begins in the heart long before that day arrives. It begins by deciding what kind of husband, partner, and person you want to become. It begins by recognizing that the future will require more than excitement. It will require patience, humility, honesty, communication, and a willingness to keep learning. A new chapter should not simply change your circumstances. It should change your perspective. You begin to look at time differently because you understand that the days ahead are not unlimited. You begin to value conversations that once seemed ordinary. You begin to appreciate the people who support you. You begin to realize that some of the greatest blessings in life are not the things that attract attention, but the relationships that give your life meaning. And as I look toward the future, I know there will be challenges. No honest promise should pretend otherwise. There will be unexpected moments. There will be difficult conversations. There will be days when plans change and days when patience is tested. But difficulty does not have to destroy a relationship. Sometimes difficulty can reveal how strong the foundation really is. The goal is not to build a life without problems. The goal is to build a relationship strong enough to face problems together. That means remembering that marriage is a partnership. When one person is struggling, the other should not immediately judge. When one person succeeds, the other should celebrate. When one person is uncertain, the other can offer reassurance. When both people are tired, they can remind each other why they began. That is what a promise means to me. It means that the future is no longer only about what I want individually. It becomes about what we can build together. There's also something deeply humbling about realizing that the future cannot be controlled completely. We can make plans, but life will always contain surprises. We can prepare, but we cannot predict everything. We can hope for certain outcomes, but we must also learn how to adapt when circumstances take us somewhere unexpected. So the promise is not that everything will happen exactly as planned. The promise is that we will face what comes with honesty and courage. That mindset changes the way you look at marriage. Instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong, you begin asking, how can we handle whatever comes? Instead of expecting perfection, you prepare for growth. Instead of expecting every day to be easy, you commit to making every day meaningful. And perhaps the most important part of this new beginning is gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that brought you here. Gratitude for the lessons learned through difficult seasons. Gratitude for the people who encouraged you when you needed encouragement. Gratitude for the opportunities to grow. Gratitude for the chance to begin again. Sometimes we spend so much time waiting for the next chapter that we forget to appreciate the chapter we are currently living. But every chapter served a purpose. The difficult seasons taught patience. The disappointments taught discernment. The waiting taught trust. The mistakes taught humility. The moments of uncertainty taught courage. And now those lessons can become part of the foundation for what comes next. That is why I do not want to enter this new chapter pretending that I have everything figured out. I want to enter it willing to continue learning. I want to become better at communicating, better at listening, better at loving, and better at showing gratitude for the person who chooses to walk beside me. A future is not created by one announcement. It is created through everyday choices. The wedding date may mark a special day, but every day after that will offer another opportunity to honor the promise. Every morning will be another chance to choose kindness. Every challenge will be another chance to choose patience. Every disagreement will be another chance to choose understanding. Every joyful moment will be another chance to celebrate together. That is the future I want to build. Not a perfect future, because perfection is impossible. Not a future without difficulties, because difficulties are part of life. But a future filled with purpose, honesty, laughter, growth, loyalty, and love. And perhaps that is what this entire journey has been preparing me to understand. The most beautiful part of a new beginning is not knowing exactly what will happen. It is knowing that you are willing to walk forward anyway. The date is announced. The decision has been made. The past has taught its lessons, and the future is waiting. Now the promise becomes real through the life that comes next. And with gratitude for everything that brought me here, I am ready to step into this new beginning with an open heart, a willing spirit, and the courage to build the future one day at a time.